In this podcast episode, Joe Rogan hosts Andrew Wilson, a former robotics mechanic turned political debater and commentator known for his articulate engagement in ideological discussions. Their conversation spans a wide array of topics, including conspiracy theories, the debate culture surrounding missing persons and Bigfoot, environmental and wildlife management issues, social and political unrest, firearm mechanics, immigration policies, the dynamics of left-wing activism, mental health trends across political lines, religious philosophy and ethics, historical perspectives on civilization and colonization, and the challenges and responsibilities of engaging in contemporary political discourse. The podcast opens with a discussion on the origins of certain Prove Me Wrong movements and their co-option by organizations like TPUSA. Candace Owens is mentioned for embracing grand conspiracy theories, often escalating in absurdity, including claims involving time travel and the Mandela effect. Wilson reflects on his experience investigating fringe beliefs, particularly UFO enthusiasts and Bigfoot hunters. During his work on the show, Joe Rogan Questions Everything. These subcultures, often populated by similar adherents he describes as socially isolated or eccentric, provide insight into why certain mysteries persist despite a lack of evidence. The conversation touches on the nature of missing person cases in national parks, missing for Len, commonly attributed by conspiracy-oriented researchers to wild men, though Wilson debunks more supernatural explanations by describing natural predation and decomposition processes that obscure human remains in wilderness areas. Wilson and Rogan explore the complex interplay of predator-prey relationships in North America. They discuss how the reintroduction of wolves in places like Yellowstone and Colorado has unexpectedly influenced mountain lion behavior and elk populations, and criticize ill-considered governmental wildlife decisions that have transferred problematic wolf packs into cattle ranching areas, provoking local economic harm. They also consider the expansion of coyotes across all 50 states and their urban adaptation, including their presence in major cities such as New York and San Francisco. Broader ecological observations include the impact of invasive species such as pheasants introduced to the U.S. for sport hunting, the disappearance of native ground birds due to western coyote spread, and how human efforts to manipulate ecosystems can have unintended consequences. The conversation shifts to the scientific and military implications of particle colliders. Wilson recounts the abandoned superconducting supercollider (SSC) project near Dallas, noting that it was intended to be larger than the existing Large Hadron Collider (LHC) in Europe, but was defunded in the 1990s. They speculate on the purpose of future colliders being planned with larger diameters for more powerful particle collisions. The duo discusses theories and fears around particle colliders opening dangerous portals, creating black holes, or being harnessed for weaponry, reflecting the common mix of scientific curiosity and public dread surrounding such advanced technology. Wilson outlines how direct energy weapons are reportedly scaling up and touches on the challenge of military control over powerful scientific tools. Wilson details his knowledge about firearms, particularly the Sig Sauer P320 pistol, known for accidental discharges under specific conditions, notably with earlier models where dropping the gun could cause a negligent trigger pull due to design flaws. This expertise anchors their analysis of a controversial shooting involving a fully armed individual at a protest. They dissect the chaotic scenario from the handling of the firearm to how adrenaline and confusion escalate responses, concluding that while accidental discharge is plausible, interpretations of the event vary widely. The discussion includes the protocols for concealed carry holders, especially the responsibility to avoid conflict when armed, and the tactical mindset required in volatile confrontations with law enforcement. The episode covers ongoing civil unrest in Minneapolis and other cities, where violent protests and riots coincide with allegations of electoral fraud and political manipulation. Wilson explains the concept of a color revolution, a coordinated strategy to destabilize governments through orchestrated chaos, and presents evidence from intercepted communications indicating government involvement or support in these protest movements. He describes the tactical use of local police stand-downs to provoke federal involvement and subsequently generate incidents that shift media narratives away from fraud and towards politically charged accusations of fascism. The conversation critiques media framing, such as image manipulations that present violent actors as sympathetic or innocent, and explores how protest dynamics are designed to escalate tensions deliberately over time. They analyze historical and contemporary immigration policy, highlighting past presidential stances on deportation, demonstrating that stricter approaches historically existed within the Democratic Party. The conversation includes allegations of mass illegal immigration being leveraged for political gain via demographic manipulation and welfare incentives. Wilson discusses systemic abuse of social services through exaggerated disability claims and how coyote and migrant networks facilitate entry and political integration. The episode portrays immigration as a key element in a broader strategy to secure long-term political dominance, specifically criticizing efforts that undermine voter identification laws and democratic accountability. Wilson explores the personality traits and mental health statistics of various political demographics, observing that young liberal populations report higher rates of mental illness diagnoses compared to conservatives, with implications on political behavior and susceptibility to radicalization. He discusses the tendency of left-wing movements to attract and weaponize mentally ill individuals, pointing out the dangerous radicalization potential amplified by psychiatric medications with adverse psychological effects. The topic includes reflections on online activism, the cosplay-like nature of some left-wing militant rhetoric, and the role of social media in spreading calls for violence framed as moral crusades. The dialogue turns reflective as the hosts address the role of religious foundationalism, particularly Christianity, in shaping societal ethics and mental health outcomes. Wilson lauds Christian communities for fostering kindness, forgiveness, and a sense of collective responsibility that contrasts with more self-centered secular or progressive frameworks that prioritize harm reduction and relativism. They discuss the virtue of forgiveness within Christianity and how its absence in other ideologies leads to tribalism and self-destructive infighting. The conversation critiques atheism's link to depression and psychiatric dependence for many, while elevating the moral and social benefits found in religious adherence, including the practical outcomes of community and compassion. Wilson and Rogan delve into the historical context of colonization with an emphasis on challenging the noble savage myth. They discuss the widespread brutality of indigenous empires such as the Aztecs, Mayans, and Comanches, refuting sanitized depictions of pre-colonial societies as idyllic or peaceful. The hosts highlight the role of horses in transforming Native American tribes into formidable mounted cultures and trace the displacement of Native peoples through warfare and disease. The history of colonization is framed as a universal human phenomenon rather than uniquely a European imposition, drawing a connecting line from early human migrations out of Africa to the global spread of peoples. They also challenge modern reinterpretations that attempt to delegitimize current national identities based on ancestral colonial histories. In the latter part of the conversation, Wilson explains his personal journey from robotics mechanic and security guard to a prominent online political debater and commentator. He recounts how the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent layoffs provided the impetus to engage in political discourse online. Highlighting the rarity and value of intellectually honest debating, Wilson laments the disingenuousness he often encounters in opponents who do not truly believe their stated positions. He discusses the importance of representing a coherent worldview, Christian ethics, with clarity and rigor while engaging in modern media where much content is driven by nepotism and performative talking points. The episode closes with Wilson emphasizing the necessity and challenge of effective public discourse in a polarized era, noting how meaningful engagement can influence listeners' beliefs and enrich political understanding. Throughout the dialogue, Wilson and Rogan critique contemporary culture, including the commercialization and bureaucratization of charity, the weaponization of social services, and the politicization of social issues to maintain power. They criticize modern mental health practices, mainstream media outlets, and political figures who function more as tokens or mouthpieces than genuine thought leaders. The conversation also touches on themes of authenticity in political activism, the role of religion in shaping ethical governance, and the enduring influence of foundational moral systems in a rapidly changing socio-political landscape.